Hey guys, what's going on? It's Steve Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about Adderall. Adderall being a prescription-only drug in the United States. So, to YouTube or to the YouTube employer who might be watching this video, if it is flagged, I just want to let you know that I am following the community guidelines, especially in regards to promoting dangerous and harmful content.
This video does not promote the use of Adderall illegally. No pictures of drugs are shown. This video is just simply talking about my experience.
Alright, back to addressing the viewers. I would like to let you know that this channel is all about how to increase your focus and productivity in your professional life. And legal prescription use of Adderall may or may not be conducive to this. Today I'm going to share with you some highlights from when I was on the Smart Drug Smarts podcast with Jesse Lawler. And you can listen to my experiences with the drug with a prescription and kind of get a sense of what Adderall is like. I did have some other videos on Adderall that I posted in the past that I took down because of the mass video deletions from YouTube, but those are coming back in a new form. So enjoy the podcast interview, and please consider giving me a thumbs up if you like this content and want to see more in the future. All right, here we go.
Charge up your axons, ready your receptors, and shift your lobes into upper beta phase. You are listening to Smart Drug Smarts, the podcast dedicated to helping you optimize your brain with the latest breakthroughs in neuroscience, nootropics, and psychopharmacology.
Hello and welcome to Smart Drug Smarts. I'm your host, Jesse Lawler, excited to bring you episode number 98 in this podcast dedicated to the ongoing improvement of your own brain by any and all means at your disposal. You'll notice that we mixed it up a little with the episode intro this week, and this is going to be sort of an off-format episode, similar to the methylphenidate self-experiment episode that we did, 6 or 7 episodes ago, only this time it is with a substance that I have still, to date, not yet tried myself. But we're going to be talking with 4 users of Adderall. We've had a couple of Adderall episodes before talking with various medical professionals, but this is something different. We're just going to be getting user perspectives. So none of the people that we're going to be interviewing on this episode are in fact doctors, but they are all Adderall users, and they're all actually prescribed Adderall users. None of these people are using it through any sort of tricky, under-the-radar, back-alley means of getting it. They've all got prescriptions. They're all in the U.S., so that'll be in the main interview. If you hang around until the very end of the episode, we've got our first ever recipe recommendation here on Smart Drug Smarts, and this is a little special something in honor of the Halloween holiday that's coming up. It's very cool. It's worth looking at the photos even if you don't actually have it in you to cook up a recipe, but maybe you can muscle somebody in your family that's a kitchen/cooking aficionado to make this up for you. That'll be in the Ruthless Listener Retention gimmick, but first, let's kick things off with This Week in Neuroscience.
Smart Drug Smarts, This Week in Neuroscience.
So here's a pretty big breakthrough in stem cell research. For a while now, scientists have been able to turn random cells from the body, in this case skin cells, back into stem cells and then turn them into cells of other types. But doing that has always reset the age of the cell essentially back to being an embryo. And cells change as they age, just like your body does at the macro level. In the case of cells, what goes on is not wrinkly skin and thinking music is too loud, but that the nuclear membrane at the center of the cell starts to degenerate, and the molecules that are very neatly compartmentalized in young cells kind of break apart and get scattered and disorganized within the body of the cell. Now, what has happened recently is that scientists at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies have taken skin cells from donors at different ages and transformed them into neurons that retained the effects of aging. There were 19 people, infants to 89-year-olds, and they took these people's skin cells, turned them directly into brain cells, using a technique first developed at Stanford University in which a series of biochemical tweaks switched the skin cells directly over into brain cells without resetting the cellular age. They weren't sure if this would work at first, but testing afterwards, they found that the transformed neurons did carry the telltale signs of aging in direct proportion to the age of the donors. These study results were published in the latest issue of the journal Cell Stem Cell. Needless to say, this could have very profound effects on the studies of diseases that affect old brains, like ALS and Alzheimer's, since in theory this gives the ability to create testable batches of age-appropriate neurons rather than needing to test Alzheimer's treatments on essentially infant brain cells.
Smart Drug Smarts, the podcast where smart people talk about smart drugs.
So here we go with some perspectives on Adderall.
Yeah, I've taken Adderall 2 major times in my life. First time I was maybe about 9 or 10 years old, and it was prescribed to me by a physician at the request of my parents for kind of like acting out in class and, being a goofy kid. And the second time was when I was 21 years old and I sought that out myself. So I wasn't on that too long when I was a child because I really didn't like it. as a kid, I think most of us want to have a sense of fun and not have a sense of being bombarded with all kinds of crazy information going on in our heads. I got interested in it when I was 21 years old, and I'm 27 now, just for the sake, I was in college, and it was pretty common kind of drug to use at the university. And so I gave it a shot. And one thing I noticed, having more of an adept mind to be kind of self-aware of how these things affect me, is that definitely, I think in terms of motivation, if we don't count these kind of like natural, spontaneous moments of insight and motivation we get in our day-to-day lives, maybe like when we fall in love or we go on vacation and we see the beach or the mountains, we get a sense of motivation to go out and do something. If we take that out of the picture, then I think Adderall, for me at least, definitely is the most powerful motivation kind of catalyst I've ever encountered. The side effects are brutal. And, for me, even if I take a smaller dose, it lasts for 12 to 15 hours. I'm sweating profusely. I have dry mouth. Once I take it, I have to be zoned in for whatever it is I want to do, which does not include social activities. So if I take Adderall, then for the next 15 hours, I have to be working on what I want to be working on, or I'll be cleaning or doing something like that. And if I have like a last minute social opportunity or social engagement, I can't go to that because I physically will not be able to hold a conversation with someone, because all I will want to do is go and be productive and get the work done. That is kind of where the side effects kind of dig in. I got to the point where I was taking it daily for about a month, and I would wake up in the morning and kind of see this orange prescription bottle staring at me on my desk. And the only motivation I had to get out of bed was knowing that I could swallow that pill. So the long-term use of Adderall, while I can't speak for anyone else that takes it long-term, for me specifically is a very, very bad, nasty idea. Now, pulsing it, so taking it maybe 2 to 3 times a year, that was very helpful. But then again, while the side effects only lasted a day, I had to be prepared and plan for those side effects to come, but also reap the benefit of the work getting done. So it's definitely a trade-off. So, the dry mouth is pretty intense. Eating is not something you're really interested in doing when you're on Adderall. For the experience for me is like I'm always pretty much full, and the idea of food, it's kind of disgusting. And then when I look at it, I'm like, I don't really want to shove that into my mouth and swallow it. And I guess the final negative thing is that for me, it doesn't increase my focus. It doesn't make me smarter. I don't feel like there's any other benefit really except the motivation factor and all the nasty side effects that come with it.
Smart Drug Smarts.
Well, okay, so that's our perspectives on Adderall. A big thanks to all of our anonymous guests for giving their experiences with that drug. I don't know about you, but I found that to be quite a pinball episode between what sounded like awesome upsides and terrible downsides. I thought that probably the resounding takeaway, and this definitely echoes what we'd heard from the doctors who we've spoken about on previous Adderall episodes of this show, is that the subjective effects for somebody who is legitimately on the ADHD spectrum versus someone who isn't and is taking Adderall anyway are very different. Which isn't to say that there might not be sufficient motivation to use Adderall on occasion, even if someone is not ADHD, but it really sounded like a very different ball game of allowing one to focus in the ADHD case and throwing somebody into hyper-motivated frenzy if they weren't necessarily on the ADHD spectrum to begin with. I still haven't tried this stuff myself. I'll let you guys know if I do, of course, but I must admit that the idea of anything to which someone can easily build up a dependency and that you really feel like crap the day after taking it if you don't take it again first thing upon waking up, which is what several of the people described, that's a pretty significant downside, which makes me feel that my comfort zone for repeated use is more along the lines of the stuff in my current stack. All that said, curiosity has been known to get the better of me on occasion, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of these days I give it a go just to be able to give a fair apples-to-apples comparison versus the other stuff that I've sampled. But now, let's move along to the ruthless listener retention gimmick.
Smart Drug Smarts. Ruthless listener retention gimmick.
So when you think of Halloween, you normally think of chocolate candies and these little plastic wrap doohickeys, and it's not so much of a cake holiday. But some cake-making genius has created a Halloween-themed cake that looks like a big, bloody brain. I guess you could kind of make this at whatever size you want to, but the one that she's got photos of looks like it's probably more like the size of a brain of one of those ogres from Harry Potter. This thing's pretty gargantuan, but it looks great. It looks really like a big, bloody brain. It is apparently a red velvet cake on the inside, and it's constructed in stages, and the outermost layer is a brain flesh-colored fondant. Not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's rolled into tubes and then curled into brain-like folds on the surface. One is encouraged to use a scalpel to mold the cerebellum, the part at the lower rear of the brain that doesn't look quite the same as the rest of the brain does on its surface. And finally, the application of a seedless raspberry jam all over the top makes it look all good and bloody, like it has been pulled unceremoniously out of some screaming victim's skull. One extra bonus with this cake, unlike most cakes that as you start to eat them, they just kind of start looking worse and crummier and lose their visual luster, the half-eaten, gobbed-out version of this cake kind of looks even more scary and disgusting, kind of like a zombie got at it and it was brown and rotten on the inside. It's quite the culinary achievement, and we'll have the recipe link on the website.
Smart Drug Smarts. We get you thinking.
Okay, that is the entire episode. Thank you for hanging around until the end. If you liked what you heard, please do us a favor and spread the word on Smart Drug Smarts to friends and brain-owning colleagues. The show notes for this episode will be online at smartdrugsmarts.com/episode-98, including the links to everything that I mentioned here. Some of you have asked what is going to be episode 100, what is coming up in a couple of weeks for the centennial episode. The answer is a big resounding, I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm getting closer to being sure, and if it is what I think it is, it's going to be pretty cool. But you're going to have to wait 2 more weeks for that one. Next week is going to be a little bit of a flashback episode, I think, to a topic that we covered recently, but maybe not to the extent that we could have. There seem to be several stones unturned that we may be returning to. Anyway, no more clues. I will be back at you next week. Same time, same podcast, and with the same unflagging commitment to helping you fine-tune the performance of your own brain. Have a great week, and stay smart.
You've been listening to the Smart Drug Smarts podcast. Visit us online at www.smartdrugsmarts.com and subscribe to our mailing list to keep your neurons buzzing with the latest in brain optimization. Smart Drug Smarts should be listened to for entertainment purposes only, although some guests on the show are medical doctors, most are not, and the host is just some random guy. Nothing you hear on this podcast or read at smartdrugsmarts.com should be considered medical advice. Consult your doctor and use some damn common sense before doing anything you think might have a lasting impact on your brain.
All right, that's it. We made it. You see my burn here. We made it to the end of the podcast, of the YouTube video, and that's all we have for now. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe for future videos, and I want to say thanks to all the patrons listed here. That's it for now, folks, and I will see you Thursday. Peace.